another day here at Bronie's desk in Bronie's World. And today we have, again, my regular guest speaker and my dear friend, the wonderful, amazing pharmacist Ben. And he's a pharmacist, not a pharmaceuticalist. On our very first call we ever had, just over a year ago, I actually had Ben explain that because there is a difference. But anyway, today, the dearest Ben is going to speak on basic nutrition. And without any further ado, I'll let Ben explain that all to you.
All right.
Over to you, my friend.
Bronie. Hello, Bronie. So you want to just talk about the basics of nutrition, just like kind of a review of what we did in April, rather than answer questions. Is this because we have new people?
Yes, we have new people. Well, we didn't talk about it in April. It came up as part of this thing, and you said that's a whole
it came up, but we never talked about it.
That's right. Okay. You said that's a whole nother topic. We'll do it another day.
Oh, okay. I do. Okay. And hi, Michelle.
Taken us a month, 2 months.
We got Michelle on the call here. Hi, Michelle. So I came up with this idea of the 8 chapters of good nutrition many years ago. In fact, there's a YouTube video of me talking about it from like 2010 or 2011. And it's kind of a classic video. It's gotten a lot of views. And I came up with the concept because I found the nutrition is a very confusing subject. And even myself, when I go to the vitamin store here in Colorado, we've got a store where we buy vitamins called Vitamin Cottage. And I remember I would go to the Vitamin Cottage and I'd look at the vitamins and I would be just blown away by all the different vitamins and all the different brands and all the different strengths and all the different formulations. And I was studying the stuff. I knew the stuff. I knew the nutrition inside and out, and I was still blown away. And I could only imagine what my clients and my patients were thinking when they see all of these different things they're supposed to take, and they know they're supposed to take them, and they know they can be helpful, but they don't know what to do. So I came up with this concept of simplifying the whole subject of nutrition into what I call the 8 chapters of good nutrition. And that's actually the title of this talk. So I'll give you the highlights of it because we only have an hour or so. And I want to take some questions. But if you're interested in going in depth, there's a really long video on YouTube that's like 3 hours long, 2.5 hours long, something like that. We're really going to go into it in depth. The whole concept was born out of the idea born from my desire to simplify. You know, I'm always talking about simplification. Albert Einstein famously said, if you can't explain a subject to a little kid, you don't understand it yourself. So simplification is really important, number one, for us to be able to leverage or take advantage of information. And simplification, if you can explain something in a simple way to your patients and your clients, that's a reflection of your understanding of the subject. And all of us are not all of us, many of us are not only patients, but we're also distributors, and we're also health coaches, and we're also helping other people. So the 8 chapters of good nutrition is important, not just for people who are dealing with health challenges, who want to incorporate nutrition, or perhaps not even dealing with a health challenge, but want to incorporate nutrition, and also for people who are who are selling and who are participating in the business side of nutrition, the business side of longevity distributors. The 8 chapters of good nutrition is an imaginary book. People always ask me, where's the book? I haven't written the book. I probably should, but
like I say, you probably should.
I probably should. But it's an imaginary book with 8 chapters. The 8 chapters of good nutrition are protein, fats, carbohydrates, fiber, water, vitamins, minerals, and accessory nutrients. So yeah, protein, fats, carbs, fiber, water, vitamins, minerals, accessory nutrients. 8 chapters of good nutrition. I think this is very important because distinguishing these types of nutrients gives us a lot more control and a lot more understanding over the world of nutrition. There's a lot of people, possibly people here in this audience, maybe even you, Bronwyn, who say, oh, I take vitamins, or I'm going to take vitamins, or do you take vitamins, assuming vitamins are everything. Have you ever heard that, where people assume
Yes.
vitamins are all nutrition is vitamins?
I take my vitamins.
Yeah, I take my vitamins, right? And that's kind of the word vitamins is kind of a catch-all phrase for nutrition because we don't distinguish these different types of nutrients. And by not distinguishing these different types of nutrients, we lose power, we lose leverage, we lose control over how we nutriate ourselves. So it's instructive as consumers, as well as for health coaches, to really distinguish all the different types of nutrients, which I distinguish by chapters in this imaginary handbook, the 8 chapters of good nutrition. So the 8 chapters of good nutrition can be divided into 3 sections. The first section, protein, fats, and carbohydrates, are macronutrients. By macronutrients, I mean you need a lot of them, relatively a lot of them. You need grams, ounces a day. The macronutrients also are distinguished from the other forms of nutrients because they're caloric. They have calories. The macronutrients, the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, which have calories and you ingest in large quantities, are what you fast from when you do a fast. Those are the nutrients that require the most work for the body to process. They're the ones that the body has to deal with, has to break down in order to be able to take advantage of. The second section, if you will, the second department or not chapter, but we'll say section of the Handbook of Good Nutrition, are the fiber and the water. Those are non-caloric. You need a lot of them. They're like a subchapter, a subsection of the macronutrients because you need lots of it, but they're non-caloric. They don't have any calories to them, fiber and water. The third section, the vitamins and the minerals, are micronutrients. These are nutrients that you need very tiny amounts of, milligrams or micrograms of, as opposed to grams and ounces. I think you guys work with grams and ounces and stuff in Australia, right? That's part of the metric system. Grams and ounces are the macros, micrograms and milligrams, tiny little amounts, are the micronutrients, and there's no calories there. The micronutrients don't require work for the body to process. Relatively, it's probably a little bit of work that's involved, but you don't have to break them down. Absorption takes a little bit of work, but certainly not digestive work like the macronutrients require. The micronutrients also help the body take advantage of the macronutrients. The macronutrients have calories in them. Protein, fats, and carbohydrates have calories in them. Calories are energy. Calories are heat. The micronutrients are what the body uses to channel and direct all that energy into chemical reactions, to make collagen, to make bone, to build your immune system, to run your blood sugar system, to make hormones. All the various chemistry in the body is dependent on energy that's derived from food and from macronutrients and channeled, directed with the micronutrients. See, so there's a relationship here between the macros and the micros. I'm going to get to that in a second, but let me just say this. The 8th chapter is what we call accessory nutrients, things like digestive enzymes and probiotics and some more extravagant or elaborate nutrients like N-acetylcysteine and alpha lipoic acid, things we don't really talk about a lot, but they still have value. They're not essential, like the micronutrients are essential, and the calories are essential. You got to have calories, you're going to starve. You got to have the micronutrients, or you're not going to be able to take advantage of the macronutrients, but you don't necessarily need the accessory nutrients. They're helpful. Digestive enzymes, probiotics, alpha lipoic acid, and acetylcysteine. These are extremely helpful, but you can get away with them. You can get away without them. So the macronutrients and the micronutrients are the core of everything. The macronutrients, protein, fats, and carbohydrates, and fiber and water, less so fiber and water. They're kind of a special type of macronutrient, but the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates in nature come together with the micronutrients. A food that has the perfect balance of micronutrients to macronutrients is called a whole food. When we say whole food, that's what we mean. We mean a food that is a food that's found in nature that has the perfect balance of macronutrients and micronutrients. Now, over the past 150 years or so, actually really started about 10,000 years ago, but at an accelerated pace, about 100 to 150 years ago, we figured out how to process food. And processing food tends to remove the micronutrients and leave the macronutrients. So much of the food that we're subsisting on today is protein, fats, and carbohydrates without the micronutrients. And this creates a very serious problem. When the body has protein, fats, and carbohydrates, macronutrients, without the micronutrients, this is what we call processed food, or when it gets dramatic, we call it a junk food. A junk food has very little micronutrients compared to the macronutrients. These are the definitions. When people say junk food or they say processed food, there's a real definition. It's a food that has macronutrients without micronutrients, or a relatively little amount of micronutrients. So you get lots of energy, but you can't use the energy. And the body has a system for dealing with energy. Energy is a double-edged sword. Energy can blow up your house but it can also cook your food. Energy can, energy is a great thing when it's channeled into electricity, so you can run your computer, run your fan, and run your air conditioning, and run your lights. But if it isn't channeled the right way, it'll burn your house down. So the body has to protect itself from energy that's not being used. And it has a system for doing that. The system that the body uses to protect itself from energy that is not being used, remember, energy can burn down your house, so energy's got to be, the body has to protect itself from energy, is called fat. Our body fat is sequestered energy. Now, some of that energy is for a rainy day, and the body's very efficient that way. It saves energy for a rainy day. Remember, our bodies grew up in a calorie deficient environment, so storing energy was a very important thing to do. But these days, we got plenty of calories, no calorie shortage. We got the opposite problem. We've got lots of extra energy, extra calories, and the body is very efficient at dealing with that, and it stashes all that energy away on our guts and on our butts and in our thighs and throughout our body. Our body fat. What's that?
All the places we don't want it.
All the places we don't want it. But to the body, that represents a protective mechanism. So you don't burn down your house or burn down your body with this excess energy. So our obesity epidemic is in many ways caused by getting lots of energy without the ability to utilize that energy. We don't have the ability to utilize that energy because our food is deficient or short in the micronutrients that are required to utilize the macronutrients. Whole foods take care of that problem, theoretically. I'll tell you why that's not necessarily the case, but theoretically, whole foods take care of that problem because the energy is balanced out with the micronutrients. For just give you a classic example, sugar comes from the sugar plant or the sugar cane,
yes,
right? Or the sugar beet. The sugar beet and the sugar cane are two basic sources of sugar. Now, when you buy sugar in the grocery store, it's pure sugar because we figured out how to extract the essence of sugar from the sugar cane and the sugar beet. But as it turns out, the sugar cane and the sugar beet are packed with all the nutrients you need to handle sugar. Chromium, vanadium, B vitamins, niacin, thiamine, fiber, all of the things you need to help the body process the sugar are in the sugar plant, but we process that out. So nature has balanced out energy with micronutrients in what we call whole foods through genetic technologies and food processing technologies and high-tech chemistry and industrial techniques. We figured out how to extract the energy. Now, in fairness, the governments of the world know that this is a serious problem, so they do something called fortification. And that's why you'll see on your cereal, fortified, or in your milk, fortified, or in your bread, fortified. And what these fortifications are they remove all of the micronutrients from the grains, which is basically leaves behind the sugar, the calories, and they throw little nutrients back in so you don't die or so you don't get a horrible disease. That's called fortification. Nature doesn't provide you nutrients so you don't die. Nature provides you nutrients so you can thrive. The government's just happy keeping you alive. And that's the state that we're in. So in the biggest problem we have in terms of nutrition is the separation of macronutrients from micronutrients. And like I said, a whole food is supposed to take care of that problem. But these days, because of farming techniques, because of fertilizers and pesticides and our need to force the ground to grow more crops, to deliver more crops for us, the soils have become depleted. So now, even though natural foods should have micronutrients to balance the macronutrients, they really don't. They're fractions of what they really are supposed to have. So between poor farming techniques and food processing, not to mention storage, cooking, and frying, and packing, and canning, and all the different things we do to get our foods to go from farm to table, we have created a situation where we're getting way too many calories and not enough micronutrients. This is a situation that Dr. Wallach saw. Dr. Wallach noticed this in the 1940s and 1950s when he was growing up on the farms. He noticed that they had to give the animals micronutrients in order for the animals to thrive because the animals represented their livelihood. The animals represented business. So animals were fed micronutrients, and Doc was like, why aren't we giving everybody these micronutrients? Clearly, the micronutrients are important. There's not enough in the soil. He wasn't even thinking about processing because he was on a farm. But his idea was, let's start delivering micronutrients so they can, he didn't say this, but his idea was, let's deliver micronutrients, I'm saying, so they could balance out the macronutrients. And this is why micronutrient supplementation is so important. And this is why when we talk about nutritional supplementation, for the most part, we're talking about micronutrients. We're talking about vitamins and minerals. Okay, so now let's talk about each individual chapter here, okay? Because they're all very interesting and they're all so it's very instructive to understand how these things work so we can take advantage of it in our lives and for our patients, for our families, and for our friends and our loved ones, et cetera. So chapter 1 is protein. Protein is the most important chapter in the Handbook of Good Nutrition. Your body is mostly protein. If your body was a movie, protein would be the leading man. In a movie, you always have a leading man or a leading woman. Russell Crowe. You guys know who Russell Crowe is, right? Famous Australian leading man. What?
He's an Aussie.
Famous Aussie. Yes, famous Aussie. I was going to say Brad Pitt, but we'll say Russell Crowe. I like Russell Crowe.
No, Russell Crowe's much nicer than Brad Pitt.
What's that?
Russell Crowe's much nicer than Brad Pitt.
So there you go. Russell.
And he's a Rabbitohs supporter.
And he's a what?
Rabbitohs supporter.
I don't know who that is, but
it's all right. It's one of our footy teams.
Technically, he's a Kiwi.
Okay, whatever. But he lived across Harbour and he's a Rabbitohs supporter. He's good in my book.
Okay, technically he's a Kiwi.
We're both covered. We got the Aussies.
Right, but in any case,
yeah, he's a Kiwi that immigrated to Australia, and then the Australians claimed him like they do a lot of Australia.
Why do those Aussies always do that to you Kiwis? That's terrible, Bronie. Do something about that. Anyway,
we claim you, Kevin.
So here's the thing: Russell Crowe is the leading man. He's a heck of a good actor, right? He's an awesome actor, but he can't act by himself. He needs to have supporting actors, and supporting actors are very important. Supporting actors get their own Oscars. They get their own awards because they're very important. To be a supporting actor is very important. Leading man is obviously the most important, but the leading man can't do it without supporting actors. The supporting actors support him. And this is the relationship that protein has with fats and carbohydrates. Protein's the leading man. It's the Russell Crowe of nutrition. And your body is mostly made of protein. It's the protein that runs the body. Your genetics don't make fats and carbohydrates. They make protein. Protein is the very essence. If your body was a machine, the gears and the wheels would be the protein. The oil and the bars and the things that turn, those might be the supporting actors, but the gears and the wheels, the star of the show is the protein. Is the most important part of the body. It's also the hardest nutrient for the body to process. It's also the most expensive of the nutrients, which is why most people relative to the other don't get enough protein relative to the other chapters, if you will. It's the most expensive. Obviously, meat, eggs, dairy, fish, these are all expensive types of foods compared to the other two chapters. Proteins are complex molecules that are made up of building blocks. The very essence of the building blocks are called amino acids. You've all heard the term amino acids. You can think of amino acids as being words. You could think of letters, we'll say, not even words. We'll say the amino acids are letters. The letters spell words, which are called peptides, and the words make sentences, which are called proteins. So you've got amino acids, you've got peptides, and you've got proteins, and these are all different configurations of amino acids that are longer, that are different lengths of amino acids that are longer when they're peptides and still longer when they're proteins. Proteins can be incredibly complex, and they can be twisted, and they can come in one-dimensional, two-dimensional, three-dimensional. They can become very, very complex. And sometimes they can have hundreds of amino acids in them, made up of dozens, sometimes even hundreds of, or probably dozens of peptides in them. So proteins are extremely complex. They all come from building blocks. What's really interesting about the proteins is the proteins, as I say, they run the body, especially one form of proteins, which are called enzymes. Enzymes are all proteins, and they're very complicated. And what's cool about the proteins is the proteins themselves are very, very important, and the enzymes are very, very important, but the peptides themselves can be important even before they become proteins. You've all heard of collagen peptides, for example. That's an example of a peptide that's not a protein, but it still has tremendous therapeutic value. Peptides can have amazing therapeutic value, as can amino acids. The individual amino acids have therapeutic value. Branched chain amino acids are important for building muscle. Glycine is important for detoxification. Tyrosine can give you as much energy as coffee. So each amino acid has its own therapeutic value. When it's stuck together into a peptide, it has therapeutic value. When it comes together as a protein, it's got tremendous therapeutic value or biological value. So protein is the superstar, the leading man of the Handbook of Good Nutrition, if it was a movie. And ingesting enough protein is critical, but protein is very hard for the body to process relative to fats and carbohydrates, which are much easier for the body to process. So protein digestion is very, very important to pay attention to. And many people, because they're deficient in certain nutrients, I'll tell you what those are in a second, are not getting the value that they should from the protein. And because it's expensive, they're not even getting the protein that they need. The average a protein, I should tell you, a protein utilization by the body is measured by something called biological value, or BV. The biological value of a protein tells you how well it's used. And things like steak, for example, don't have the greatest biological value. Beans, they don't have the greatest biological value. What do you think the most usable protein is? The highest BV protein there is. Do you know what that would be?
No.
Kevin, you know?
He's
Kevin?
not listening.
He's not
Eggs.
listening.
Eggs. Oh,
Who
yes.
said that?
That'd be grand.
Go. 100. The BV scale goes from 0 to 100. Eggs are 100. Perfect.
I should have known that.
Perfect score on the biological value chart. There's one protein that's even more biologically available than eggs. Even
Okay, now you've
more
lost me.
protein value. What's that? You know what that is?
No,
Whey protein. Protein that comes from whey.
Oh,
Whey,
whey. Okay,
W-G-Y, whey protein. Whey protein and egg protein are your two most valuable proteins. And then going down the list, you go into fish and meat. Then all the way down the bottom, you go into the vegetable proteins. The vegetable proteins are don't have the same kind of biological value. A lot of vegetarians are like, oh, you can get your protein from beans, you can get it from peas, etc. But they don't have the same kind of biological value as animal proteins. And as much as I don't like killing animals, and I don't eat meat really that much myself, the quality protein is going to come from animal protein. That's the best protein going, is animal protein versus vegetable protein. Nonetheless, there's problems there too because of the way we farm and the way we feed our animals and hormones and antibiotics, et cetera, et cetera. So it's
that'd be why Doc
tricky.
really pushes eggs.
Eggs, that's one of the reasons. But eggs are not only are eggs, well, eggs, that's a whole talk on itself about the value of eggs. But just for protein alone, eggs are 100 on the BV scale. So protein, it requires a lot of work, a lot of digestive work, but it's the most important of all of the nutrients. And it's the nutrient that you probably need the most of. You need probably 0.5 gram to 1 gram per pound of body weight, roughly in that area. So if you weigh 100 pounds, I'm not sure what that is in kilos, maybe 50 kilos or 60 kilos or something like that.
Just over 50, I think.
You need probably 50 to 100 grams of protein a day. More if you're a bodybuilder, more if you're an athlete, more if you're recovering from surgery, more if you're pregnant. There are times in your life you're going to need more protein, but 0.5 gram to 1 gram per pound of body weight is a good place to be. You got to be careful if you're cooking your protein, because cooking can be a double-edged sword. Cooking can be important for releasing the protein, making it easier to digest, pre-digesting it, but you can overcook and you can ruin the protein. So it's kind of, you got to be a little bit careful with protein. Second chapter is fats. Fats are probably the most misunderstood of all the chapters in the Handbook of Good Nutrition. Now, in this room, we don't really have that problem. And, in the year 2024, we have a little bit better understanding of fats than we did 20 years ago or even 10 or 15 years ago. I remember 20 years ago, everybody was fat-free. You remember this? I don't know if you had that whole thing in Australia. It was a big fat-free. Nobody wanted fat. And ironically, that's when our obesity epidemic really skyrocketed, when we were all going fat-free, because it's not really fat that makes you fat. Farmers do not feed their cattle fat. Farmers who obviously want their cattle to be fat, to get more money for them, right? They don't feed their cattle fat. What do they feed their cattle when they want to make them fat? It's not fat. I'll tell you what it is here in a second. And this is a clue to what's making us fat.
Grains.
So, exactly. It's not the fat that makes you fat, it's the grains, it's the carbohydrates. So we'll talk about that here in a second. So fats can be subdivided into various sections. One way of dividing up fats is into good fats and bad fats. One of the most important books I've ever read in my life in terms of in nutrition and health, and it's a book anybody who's interested in health or nutrition should read, is called Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, by a guy named Udo Erasmus, and it is the classic book on fats. Very easy to read. It's a great reference. If you're interested in nutrition or if you're in the business, you definitely want to copy this book, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. It's like 20th edition. He's been writing it since the 1980s. It's the classic book on fats. And he divides up into fats that heal, fats that kill. And fats are the bad fats, if you will, are the processed fats. processed at the level of the factory and also processed in the home. They process them in the factory through serious industrial techniques, hydrogenation, for example, or transesterification. Our ability to process fats turns fats into things that are from chemicals that are very unstable and break down quickly into chemicals that are stable. See, the problem with fats is they break down. They're very, very high energy. A fat is the sunlight that has been super concentrated. There's a process that's responsible for all of life on planet Earth called photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is how the how sunlight gets turned into matter, into solid matter. I mean, when you think about it, this comes from the sun. Our whole reality comes from the sun via photosynthesis. The sun, photons, pieces of light called photons, hit chemistry in plants, and plants turn that through this chemical machinery, turn the photons into electrons. And then the electrons are captured, and then animals eat the plants, and they concentrate all those electrons, and that's what fat is. Fat is super concentrated energy, as we talked about earlier. It's how the body deals with excess energy. It stores it as fat. The problem is whenever something is whenever energy is highly concentrated, it's unstable. It breaks down quickly, and fats break down quickly. We call fats that break down rancid. Rancidity is the term that describes fats that are broken down. And for industrial purposes and for commercial purposes, you can't have fats breaking down. Nobody's going to buy them. So changing fats from an unstable form to a stable form, from a highly energetic form to a locked-in form, is one of the food industry's most important jobs. The very first food that was solidified oil, or as we say, hydrogenated oil, whenever you hear the term hydrogenated, that means solidified. The very first solidified oil revolutionized eating, revolutionized the food industry. It turned the food industry into the behemoth, the Leviathan it is today, this invention. And it was the invention of a solid form of an oil that nobody would ever want to eat. But when it was solidified, it became very convenient. It was cottonseed oil. And this solidified form of cottonseed oil that revolutionized the food industry and turned the food industry into this huge Leviathan that employs more people than any other industry in the world, probably. It's probably the most profit-intensive industry in the world as well. It was called Crisco. Came out of the, have you guys heard of Crisco? Do you have Crisco over there?
Yeah, we have Crisco down here.
Crisco was the very first oil that was solidified so that it could be used, it could be shipped, and it could be processed, and it could be shipped and stored. It's a solidified oil. And what was cool about Crisco is you could melt it, and it would turn into a liquid oil, and then it would harden again. It was so cool. This is the most amazing thing. Previous to Crisco, the only oil they had, if they were going to cook, was lard. Crisco was the first form of artificial lard, of synthetic lard. It allowed women to use to replace lard in their formulas with this solidified vegetable oil, because vegetables are cheaper to grow and cheaper to process than pigs. All of a sudden, everybody went into lard. Went into Crisco. They got rid of their lard and they went into Crisco. As advances proceeded, we figured out more different ways to turn these liquid oils into solid oils, and that's where margarine came from. That's where all of our hydrogenated oils come from, and all of your baked goods and pastries and snacks. And if you look on the ingredient deck of almost any food that has a fatty texture to it, you'll see hydrogenated oils. They're ubiquitous. The problem with these oils, these hydrogenated oils, is while they're convenient for industry, they're horrible for the body. The body has no idea what to do with a hydrogenated oil. It tries to use it in chemistry, and because it's a fake oil and a solid oil, even though it's convenient for industry, the body can't work with it. And hydrogenated oils clog up the body's biochemistry. It's no accident that since Crisco was invented and since oils and fats were solidified, heart disease has gone through the roof. Disease in general has gone through the roof. Cancer has gone through the roof. All of our chronic disease, degenerative disease statistics started to increase and increase dramatically when we figured out how to hydrogenate and how to sell and how to hydrogenate and then how to sell and then how to eat processed fats. And by the way, hydrogenated fats are perfect for deep frying. And anybody who's ever worked in a restaurant knows that the deep fryers use these solid oils, and they stick the solid oil into the deep fryer, it melts, and then this is why French fries have become so ubiquitous, is when a hydrogenated oil is melted at a high temperature, it liquefies. And then when a starch is put into that liquefied oil, that liquefied hydrogenated oil, the starch contains little boxes, little holes. All starches, if you look at it under a microscope, you'll see little holes. Potato starch and wheat starch, and starch is just sugar, carbohydrates, and starches have little holes. And when you dip the potato starch or the corn starch or whatever it is into the oil, the hot oil, and then you pull it out, all that hot oil solidifies in the little boxes in the starch. And then when you bite into it, it's crispy. And human beings can't get enough of crispy. We love our crispy. And there's some interesting reasons for that. There's a really cool book called The Omnivore's Dilemma, which talks all about why we like crispy so much. And this is the perfect addictive food because we love the crisp. And the crisp is the end result of this hydrogenated liquid oil that's solidifying in the little boxes in the starch. And think of all the foods that everybody's addicted to. French fries and fried chicken. And here in the United States, we have deep fried Twinkies and deep fried Snickers bars and deep fried turkeys. And all of it is the end result of solidified oils that cool down when they hit the starch in the little boxes of the starch and create these little tiny microscopic little boxes of fat that are crisp when they get cracked. So those are the fats that kill. However, there's also fats that heal. And fats are extremely important for the body's fatty system. The body's made up of a watery system and a fatty system. And the fatty system is where the hormones, the steroid hormones come from. The fatty system is where the coating on our nervous system, on our nerve cells come from. The fatty system is important for the brain. And the fatty system is also important for energy. The fatty system plays a seriously important role in health and longevity. On the good side, fats that kill, those will kill us, but the fats that heal are critically important for health. And the fats that heal come in two varieties. They come in one variety we call saturated, and another variety we call unsaturated. Saturation refers to solidity. The artificial fats are artificial versions of saturated fats. They're artificial versions of nature's solid fats. Unsaturated fats are liquid fats. Oils, vegetable oils, are liquid fats. They're unsaturated. So when a fat is liquefied, it's usually unsaturated. When it's solid, it's saturated. Now, when I was growing up, back in the 1960s and the 1970s, and possibly you guys too, I don't know what it's like in Australia, we were taught that saturated fats are bad for you and unsaturated fats are good for you. We were told, and even still today in the United States, a lot of doctors who don't understand nutrition and mainstream government and public offices of nutrition tell you to limit your saturated fats and eat lots of unsaturated fats. This is not correct. This is not necessarily good because you see, saturated fats are stable, naturally stable. Hydrogenated fats, the processed fats, those are artificially stabilized through high-tech processing, which destroys the fat, makes it unusable. Saturated fats are naturally stable. Unsaturated fats are very, very unstable. They break down quickly, and they should never be heated or processed. And there are a lot of health challenges today, including cardiovascular disease and cancer, the two biggest killers, that are linked to highly processed unsaturated fats. And this is why Doc is always saying, stay away from vegetable oils, cooked vegetable oils. The most important unsaturated fats come from vegetables and grains. They're vegetable oils and grains. And by the way, there's a lot of heavy industrial processing that takes place for the production of most unsaturated fats. You can get unsaturated fats without heavy industrial processing, but that's not where most of us get our unsaturated fats from. So you gotta be very careful with the unsaturated fats. You don't have to be as careful with the saturated fats. The two best saturated fats are coconut oil and butter. Butter and coconut oil are the two best saturated fats, but there's a lot of saturated fats. There's saturated fats in meats, there's saturated fats in eggs, there's saturated fats in fish, there's saturated fats in grains, there's saturated fats in nuts, there's saturated fats in seeds. There's lots of places where you can get saturated fats. And saturated fats, you can eat as much as you want because they never break down. Or I should say you eat as much as you want, but you can cook them as much as you want because they don't break down. On the other hand, unsaturated fats break down, and you got to be very careful with unsaturated fats. You never want to cook your unsaturated fats. In fact, you want to be very careful with ingestion of unsaturated fats because most of them are already processed and most of them have already become rancid. I'm in the skin business, just as an aside, and because people think that when they put an unsaturated fat on their skin, they've moisturized, which is obviously ludicrous because moisture is water and unsaturated fats are oil. And what do we know about oil and water? They don't mix. So one of the silliest things we do as a culture is we put unsaturated fats on our skin, liquid fats, vegetable oil. If you look on your favorite skincare product, you'll see soy oil, corn oil, sesame oil, hazelnut oil, macadamia nut oil, all these various different vegetable oils. And we think we're doing something good for our skin. You're doing something horrible for your skin. And you should never put a vegetable oil on your skin. And anybody, well, I don't want to get too far off into the rabbit hole, but you want to be very careful about putting unsaturated fats on your skin because not only are they already going to be rancid, also known as oxidized, just from being manufactured, but once they hit the air, once they hit the sun, or the heat from your skin for that matter, they're going to get even more rancid. So unsaturated fats, contrary to what most of us have learned as we were growing up, unsaturated fats are problematic. You got to be very careful with them. Now, if they're fresh or they're still in the food, they're still in the seeds, for example, or they're still in the grains, they still have tremendous nutritional value. They can be very valuable, but when you cook them and when you process them, you got to be very careful. Saturated fats, you don't have that problem with. So contrary to popular belief, it's kind of reversed. Saturated fats, those are much more forgiving than the unsaturated fats. However, there are two specific unsaturated fats that are acidic. They're acids. And these two unsaturated fats, as it turns out, are tremendously important for the health of your hormones, for the health of your skin, for the health of your nervous system, for the health of all of your cells. These two unsaturated fats cannot be made by the body, and they're incredibly, incredibly important. They're so important that if you don't get enough of these, you're going to find yourself craving fats. And many of us who crave fats are really craving these two very special unsaturated fats that are acids. Because they're not made by the body, we say they're essential. Remember, essential means your body doesn't make it, right?
But that needs it.
So what are these two special fats called? They're called essential fatty acids. And these are two very special kinds of unsaturated fats that are critically important for various functions in the body, especially the nervous system and the skin and the hormone system, and also the brain and the nervous system and all cells, really. So these essential fatty acids have to come in as supplements if you're going to get them in any great quantity. They're in foods, they're in grains, and they're in seeds, and they're in various animals and organ meats and such. But if you want to be sure that you're getting enough of them, you got to supplement with them, and that's why the ultimate EFAs from Longevity are among the most important of all the nutritional supplements, and they're part of that we sell, and they're part of the Healthy Start Pack. There's a reason why they're in all the packs, because they're critically important. So you've got fats to kill. Those are the processed ones. You want to stay far away from them. They call them hydrogenated fats or trans fats. Margarine is the classic example, but you'll see them in all kinds of packaged goods and snacks and cakes, and you want to stay as far away from them as you can. Then there is the fats that heal, and those come in two varieties: saturated fats, which are solid, coconut oil and butter are the classic examples, but they're found in eggs, and they're found in avocados, and they're found in organ meats, and they're found in fish, and they're found in a lot of different sources, beans and grains and seeds, etc. There's a lot of places where there's saturated fats, and contrary to popular belief, they're stable, and you get a lot of energy from them, and they've got a lot of nutritional value. They're not essential. Your body can make them, so they're not essential, but they still have tremendous value. And because fats help flavor how food spread on your tongue, fats improve the flavors of things. So we like to add fats to things. Everybody out there who thinks they love chocolate, you don't love chocolate. Because if they took fat out of the chocolate, it would taste terrible to you. You like milk chocolate or maybe dark chocolate, which has a little bit less fat in it. But cocoa is really awful stuff. But when you put sugar in cocoa and you add fat to it, it's irresistible. So fat and sugar, or fat and salt, or fat in anything really enhances flavor, because it helps the flavor compounds contact more taste buds. It livens up the taste of things. That's why we like butter on things, especially the combination of sugar with butter, in fact, or sugar with fats. Unsaturated fats, contrary to what we've learned, you got to be a little bit careful with. You never want to cook them. You never want to process with them. And by the time you're getting them, they're already probably processed and cooked. So they're already problematic. And you want to be very careful about what you put on your skin. But there are two unsaturated fats that are so important that they're like vitamins. They're essential. You got to have them, or else you're going to have skin problems, or else you're going to have hormone problems, or else you're going to have brain problems, or else you're going to have problems making cells and repairing cells. You're going to have all kinds of problems if you don't get these two essential fatty acids. They call them omega-6 and omega-3, and that's a whole topic in and of itself, how valuable they are. But in the interest of time, we move on to chapter 3, which is carbohydrates. Now, you need protein, you need fat, but guess what? The one food group, or the one macronutrient chapter that there's no urgent need for is carbohydrates. Interestingly, carbohydrates, the name comes from carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbohydrate. 8 means oxygen, HYDR, hydro means water, carb is carbon, and it's basically a carbohydrate is a carbon, a hydrogen, and an oxygen. A fat is a type of carbohydrate. It's a squished up carbohydrate that's been really dense, where the energy is really squished. It's like a battery of carbohydrate energy. Carbohydrates provide lots of energy. Remember I told you about the sun, photons from the sun hitting plants, and those photons get turned into electrons? Well, guess what? Those electrons are on carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are where the sun gets trapped into matter. So there's a lot of energy in a carbohydrate. There's even more energy in a fat because that's even more concentrated. If you take a nitrogen, and any farmer out there, any gardener out there knows how important nitrogen is for life, right? That's what fertilizer is. I don't know if you remember this, but a long time ago in the United States, 25, 30 years ago, some guy blew up a building in Oklahoma City with nitrogen, with fertilizer. You ever hear that? Fertilizer is explosives. Fertilizer is very explosive stuff. Because of nitrogen. Nitrogen turns nail polish into dynamite. You ever hear something called TNT?
Yes.
TNT is nail polish with nitrogen. If you take glycerin is the stuff that you could drink or you could eat or you could put on your skin. It's just sugar, basically. And you stick a nitrogen on it, you get nitroglycerin. Nitrogen makes things explosive. It gives things power. It gives things energy. That's why farmers need nitrogen. The greatest invention, one of the greatest inventions ever, maybe the greatest invention, was the invention that took nitrogen from the air and put it into a solid material. The air is about 78% nitrogen. But we can't use it. But this one guy, Fritz Haber, figured out how to take nitrogen from the air and put it into a solid matter, and that made fertilizer. A protein is a carbohydrate with nitrogen. If you take a carbohydrate, stick nitrogen on it, you get a protein. So everything is carbohydrate based. A fat is a squished up carbohydrate. A protein or amino acid is a carbohydrate with a nitrogen stuck on it, but it's all carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the base of everything. And carbohydrates come from the sun. Carbohydrates are the plant, or what the plant does to sunlight. It's pretty darn incredible, actually, when you think about it. How plants can turn the sun into matter. That is, praise God. That is Nobody knows how that's done. That's done at the quantum level inside plant cells. That is the most amazing process on planet Earth, is the ability of turning light into matter. Think about that. That's magic at the highest form of magic there is to turn light into solid matter. And that solid matter is carbohydrate. This is why carbohydrates are so important, even though they're not essential, because you can get their energy from fat or even from protein. But the reason carbohydrates are so important is because they're energy from the sun. When you eat carbohydrates, you're eating the sun. You're eating the first place the sun becomes matter when you eat carbohydrates. The problem with carbohydrates is because our drive for carbohydrates is so urgent, we have such a high need for carbohydrates, industries have figured out how to extract the carbohydrates from all of the food. So we just have carbohydrate-rich foods without the nutrients you need to process the carbohydrates. And as I said earlier, the carbohydrates, because they're high energy, are necessarily turn to a storage form, because the body can't deal with high energy when it doesn't have the nutrients to process that energy, and that's fat. Mm-hmm. So you can do fine without carbohydrates, although there are some carbohydrates that have some medicinal value, therapeutic value. For example, if you hear the word glucan, you're talking about a carbohydrate. And as you probably know, beta-glucan has tremendous immune boosting value. It's a carbohydrate that has tremendous immune building properties. It also has anti-wrinkle properties for the skin. Fucoidan, and the fucoid Z, is a carbohydrate that is also incredibly important for the immune system. It's also important for the blood sugar system. It's also an important source of nutrients for bacteria in the gut. There's all kinds of benefits to carbohydrates. But if you had to limit one nutrient or one chapter, one macronutrient, it would be the carbohydrates. And our ingestion of carbohydrates is behind a lot of our health issues. Between our ingestion of distorted fats and carbohydrates without the nutrients to help our body use the carbohydrates, you have probably the source of most of our health challenges, just in those two chapters. The fourth chapter is fiber, which is a type of carbohydrate. But it's a carbohydrate. Fiber is a carbohydrate the body can't extract energy from. They say, why would fiber be so important? If you can't get energy, you can't use it. The body can't use it. You eat fiber, it goes right out the other end. Why would that be important? Well, because even though we can't get energy from fiber, our bacteria can. Our gut bacteria love fiber, and they, in return for the fiber, they secrete out wonderful compounds that make us feel good, wonderful compounds that build our immune system, wonderful compounds that strengthen the intestine, wonderful compounds that help us feel satisfied and full. So we can't get energy from fiber, but bacteria can. And those bacteria, in return for the fiber, give us wonderful compounds for helping us stay healthy. That's why fiber is so important. Fiber also has an ability to attract toxins magnetically and pull them out of the body, almost like a broom. It can sweep out toxins out of your intestines. So fiber is incredibly detoxifying, as well as being very important for nourishing for bacteria, important for the digestive system, as well as the immune system and the nervous system and other parts of the body, the skin, other parts of the body that will benefit from bacterial secretions that are obtained through bacterial ingestion of fiber. Now, there's two kinds of fiber. You've got fiber that's mushy. You'll find that in things like pears and okra and avocado. It's mushy fiber. And then you have solid fiber. They call it soluble and insoluble fiber. And that's the wiry kind of fiber, like in a celery stalk or in nuts or in seeds. It's a very hard fiber. They're both important. I don't want to digress too much because in the interest of time, but they're both important. And probably, I personally make a fiber drink every morning that's incredibly filling. And because the fiber comes from flax, it's also a great source of protein and great source of vitamins. And you can do this yourself. I think I may have told you about this. You take a couple tablespoons of flax seeds, you grind them up in a coffee grinder, and then you turn it into a powder. You put the powder in water. You add a little stevia, a little clove, a little cinnamon. Makes the most delicious fiber drink. It's filling. It's great for your bowels. It's great for female hormones. Plus, you get more protein. If you do it right, you'll get as much protein or more protein than you get from an egg, or a couple of eggs even, depending on how much you do. And plus, you get vitamin E, you get minerals, you get all kinds of wonderful nutrients. So fiber is very, very important, not only because it helps clean your body out, not only because it helps feed bacteria, but depending on the source of your fiber, you're going to get nutrients from the fiber as well. Plus, it's very filling. So the more fiber you eat, the less food you're going to want, the less calories you're going to want to ingest. As we just talked about, fiber doesn't have calories, so you're getting filled without calories. That's pretty cool.
It is.
And then water is the same way. Between water and fiber, you got two very important, I don't say nutrients because they don't really have nutritional value, but foodstuffs. Water's not really food, but we'll call it a foodstuff that is very filling and improves biochemistry on multiple levels without requiring work. Calories require work. Protein, fats, and carbohydrates, in order for them to be utilized, require work. Fiber and water doesn't have nutritional value, but it's filling without requiring work. And fiber, depending on the source, can give you some nutrients that aren't related to the fiber, but are part of the complex. Then you got the micronutrients. The micronutrients have no calories. They don't require work. The micronutrients come in three varieties: vitamins, minerals, and accessory nutrients. Your vitamins come in two types. Your vitamins come in fatty and watery. This distinction of fatty and watery is very fundamental in chemistry. It's very fundamental in biology. The body doesn't really have a problem with watery stuff. It has a problem with fatty stuff. Fatty stuff is sticky. If you have peanut butter and jelly, you're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then you take the knife and it's got peanut butter and jelly on it, and you put it under the water in the sink. What's going to come off first from the water?
Jelly.
The jelly, not the peanut butter. The peanut butter sticks. That's why peanut butter sticks to the roof of your mouth. It has a sticky quality. And fats, the fat side of the equation is very sticky, very hard for the body to deal with. Watery stuff is not. Watery stuff is for quick energy. Fatty stuff is for longer energy, more sustained energy. So your watery vitamins they come in two varieties. They're your B complex and vitamin C. Those are the two watery vitamins. And because they're watery, you have to drink them, or you have to ingest them with liquids, or in foods that are liquids like fruits and vegetables or even meat, in order to get the value from them. The problem with the water-soluble nutrients is because they're so easy for the body to process, they're also easy for the body to eliminate. So every time you go to the bathroom, every time you urinate, you lose your water-soluble nutrients, and a lot of us are drinking water. And the more water you drink, which is great to drink a lot of water, the more of these water-soluble nutrients you're going to lose. Which is why, in my opinion, the most important longevity product, there's thousands of longevity products, and there's more, they get more every month or every year, there's more of them. But still, to this day, starting when I joined longevity in 1998, and to this day in 2024, 26 years later, the most important product longevity has is the liquid nutrients, which is the Beyond Tangy Tangerine. So when you're drinking water now, and we all want to drink water, and probably nobody drinks enough water. You want half a gallon to a gallon of water. Now that you're drinking water, mix Beyond Tangy Tangerine with it. Not necessarily all the time, but part of the water you're drinking should be Beyond Tangy Tangerine water. And that's why I always recommend that when people do Beyond Tangy Tangerine, they do it throughout the day rather than doing it all at once. A lot of times people will do Beyond Tangy Tangerine all at once, and they'll go, oh my God, that tastes horrible. Well, that's one problem. Also, they'll go, oh my God, my belly doesn't feel so good. And then they'll go to the bathroom and they'll have, boom, right? Crampy, bloaty, explosive diarrhea. Why is that? Because as the Beyond Tangy Tangerine, remember it's water soluble. As the Beyond Tangy Tangerine is going into your intestine, it's pulling water with it. And now you have all this water in your intestine, and that's what accounts for the bloating and the cramping and the diarrhea that people get. So for these reasons, I like people to drink their Beyond Tangy Tangerine throughout the day, smaller amounts. And that way the body will get more benefit from it. The body has a use it or lose it kind of attitude. If it's not using it, it's going out the other end. So this will allow the body to use it a little bit more in a little bit more sustained release fashion. It will improve the taste because it's pretty strong tasting. And then it will also improve any digestive symptoms. So if you have any customers who say, oh, I did the Beyond Tangy Tangerine, I got all bloated, blah, 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 divide the doses up and do it throughout the day rather than all at once. Or if they say, I don't like the taste, again, smaller doses throughout the day. The B vitamins are your energy vitamins, and they are so unbelievably important. It's can't even express to you how important they are. The energy production machinery inside a cell depends on the B vitamins. And without the B vitamins, all of the energy intensive reactions, chemical reactions, are going to work less efficiently, especially for the brain. And B vitamin deficiency is likely behind, and the nervous system in general. B vitamin deficiency is likely behind peripheral neuropathies, dementias, cognitive difficulties, neural inflammation. All kinds of nerve issues can be related to B vitamin deficiencies. And that involves, because the nerves involve all the other systems of the body, every system in the body can go right with B vitamin deficiency. And B vitamin deficiency is one of the most tragic deficiencies because B vitamins are everywhere. There's no reason anybody should ever be deficient in B vitamins, except for processing destroys B vitamins. So the Beyond Tangy Tangerine is a B vitamin gold mine. It's a treasure trove of B vitamins, as well as the second water-soluble vitamin, which I call the Babe Ruth of vitamins. You know how, you know who Babe Ruth was? Babe Ruth is like the greatest baseball player who ever lived, right? Yes. And so there are baseball players, they're great baseball players, and then there's Babe Ruth. He's in a class of his own. Vitamin C is in a class of its own. It's the Babe Ruth of vitamins. And again, it's one of those things where we could just talk all day, an hour talk on vitamin C, how important it is. But in a nutshell, it's critical for the immune system. It's critical for the blood and the cardiovascular system. And perhaps most importantly, vitamin C is the key that turns on the production of the body's most important tissue. Tissue is a fancy way of saying stuff. Chemists don't say stuff, they say tissue. It's just stuff. The body is made up of 4 types of stuff, tissue. You've got muscle tissue, you've got nervous tissue, you've got covering tissue like our skin and it covers our eyes. That's called epithelial tissue. And then you got the most important tissue of all, most important stuff of all, that's called connective tissue. The connective tissue holds everything in place. The connective tissue is what feeds and breathes and detoxifies all of the cells of the body. The connective tissue is the electricity generating tissue in the body. As we age, all of the things we hate about aging, from the pain, the joints that ache, the difficulty it is to move, the hunched over appearance, the osteoporosis, the heart disease, the wrinkles, the prolapses, the hernias. Aging is a crap show, right? all the things we hate about aging are representative of deterioration of the connective tissue. All of it. Aging is in many ways a connective tissue conundrum. It's a connective tissue problem. And vitamin C is the connective tissue vitamin. It's the connective tissue building vitamin. In fact, without vitamin C, you can't build connective tissue. It's the key that turns on the machinery. No key, no machinery. If connective tissue production is a car, vitamin C is the key that turns on the car, the engine to the car. No vitamin C, no connective tissue, which makes vitamin C the quintessential anti-aging vitamin. And it's very likely that, and I would say it's probable, that many of the traumas and the miseries and the horror of the aging process are related to deficiencies in vitamin C. And remember, it's water soluble. We're peeing it out. And if you're like most people and you're getting your vitamin C from a multiple vitamin or from an orange, you're not even getting a fraction of the vitamin C you need. You need grams of it, and an orange has maybe 10 grams if it's fresh, or 20 grams if it's fresh off the tree, let alone, not to mention what I don't even have any idea if there's any vitamin C by the time it's been turned into orange juice, or by the time it's been shipped and processed and in the store. If you're getting from a multiple vitamin, you're not even getting enough vitamin C to build the connective tissue of a squirrel, let alone of a human being. It's trace amounts, tiny amounts. That's why I call the RDAs. I don't know if you probably have your own version of RDAs. Here in the United States, we have an RDA, and people say, oh, it's 100% of the RDA, right? What do you have? What's your version of the RDA in Australia?
Good question. I have.
Okay, so here the RDA, they call the RDA the recommended daily allowance.
Pretty much the same as yours. Pretty much the same as yours. Especially here in New Zealand, we mimic yours.
Okay, so the RDA is the recommended daily allowance. I call the RDA the ridiculous deficiency allowance because it keeps you ridiculously deprived. And so many, I can't even imagine, there's probably millions of people who are deprived of nutrients because they think they're getting the nutrients they need with the RDA. So vitamin C is the quintessential anti-aging vitamin. It's the connective tissue building vitamin. It also is important for the immune system and for the cardiovascular system. In fact, every system in the body depends on vitamin C. It's unbelievably valuable. For you ladies and men for that matter, but especially for ladies, vitamin C for the skin, topical vitamin C on the skin is a must-have. But it has to be fatty vitamin C, not watery vitamin C. That's another story we can talk about some other time. The second section or second part of our vitamins are the fatty vitamins. There's 4 fatty vitamins. They go by the acronym DEAK. D-E-A-K. DEAK. D-E-A-K. Vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin K. Vitamin A and D go together. Vitamin A and D are actually more than vitamins. See, vitamins help. Vitamins assist. Vitamins help the body get the energy from the macronutrients and direct it into energy. Vitamin A and D are even better than that, or even more important than that. They're hormones. A hormone doesn't just assist. A hormone makes things happen. So most vitamins help. They're assistants. They're coenzymes or they're cofactors. Vitamin A and D, they're the big boys. They are hormones. They're powerhouses. Vitamin A is found in animal foods only. Although plants will make a form of vitamin A that's not real vitamin A, but it can be turned into vitamin A called carotene or beta carotene. But if you want real vitamin A, you got to be a carnivore. If you're a vegetarian, you can get vitamin A from orange and reds, tomatoes and watermelon and squash and pumpkin. Anywhere you see red and orange, those are carotenoids or carotenes, and they are similar to vitamin A, particularly one called beta carotene. D, of course, we get from the sun. Now, you can eat your vitamin D, but it's nowhere near as effective as the vitamin D you get from the sun. Now, it's ironic that in Australia, where you have so much sun, you still have people with vitamin D deficiency because we're terrified of the sun. And make no mistake about it, skin cancer is cancer. It's not skin cancer. It's a type of cancer that affects the skin. So if you're worried about skin cancer, you got to take care of your internal nutrition. If you're worried about photoaging, which the sun can accelerate aging, again, there are nutritional strategies to take care of that, including all the things we just talked about. That being said, you'd never want to burn. Burning is not good. You do not want to burn. But sunshine on a regular basis is very important for a lot of reasons. But for vitamin D, you make vitamin D by a chemical reaction that starts off with sunlight, with photons from the sun. Interestingly, the sun will hit a very interesting molecule in the skin and turn it into vitamin D. You know what that molecule is?
No.
It's cholesterol. Vitamin D is cholesterol. It's a form of cholesterol. It's a type of cholesterol. It's sunlight-activated cholesterol, which is yet another reason why the whole idea of cholesterol being this demon that's out to kill us is so fallacious. Vitamin D and A are hormones. Vitamin D is critically important vitamin D is important for everything, but especially for the immune system. And then vitamin A is important for building things. In fact, vitamin C, I talked about vitamin C is important for the skin. Vitamin A is the second most important vitamin for the skin, topically. And in fact, in the United States, vitamin A for the skin is a prescription for, number 1, wrinkles and photo damage, and number 2, for cancer, for skin cancer and pre-skin cancer. So vitamin A is your immune-boosting vitamin. It's your building vitamin. Vitamin D is an immune-boosting vitamin. It's a building vitamin. Vitamin A and D together are building and immunity. And a lot more than that, but for our purposes tonight, building and immunity. Vitamin E is your protecting vitamin. It's the guardian of all the cells. It protects the fats, actually. Cells have a layer of fat called a membrane that surround them. Vitamin E protects the fats. Vitamin E is not really used in chemistry. The body doesn't make things from vitamin E. All the other vitamins are used to make things. They're cofactors. Vitamin A and D are actually hormones. But vitamin E doesn't really do that. Vitamin E protects. It's like a guardian. One of the best things to protect your skin from the sun, by the way, is ingestion of vitamin E. Vitamin E is really important for wound healing. Vitamin E is very protective for the heart. Wherever you have a lot of fat in the body, the intestine, the heart, the brain, vitamin E is protective. The nerves, Vitamin E is protective against all against damage to the fats. Remember, fats are very unstable. Vitamin E is protective. In fact, a quality fat that you're ingesting, like our ultimate EFAs, you'll always see vitamin E in there. Vitamin E is in fatty nutrients to protect the fats.
It's like our armor.
What? It's like an armor.
It's like our armor.
Exactly. For the eyes too, for protecting the eyes from the sun. And then vitamin K is the most mysterious of all the vitamins. It's very important for clotting. In fact, the word K comes from the word coagulation. In German, it starts with a K. And vitamin K is a clotting vitamin. Helps support blood clotting. It keeps blood. Remember, the blood has to have a certain amount of fluidity and a certain amount of solidity. And this balance of fluidity, solidity is partially maintained by vitamin K. Vitamin K is also important for the body's utilization of calcium. Vitamin K is like a calcium magnet. It keeps calcium in the bones. And vitamin K can be used to prevent calcification for that reason, which is one of the ways that we die. We calcify, we turn to stone. And vitamin K can help protect the body from calcification. So I'm giving you this in a nutshell. This is by no means comprehensive, but this gives you a little sense. Then we move on to the accessory nutrients. And the accessory nutrients, there's zillions of them. Probably the most important are the enzymes. I told you earlier how enzymes are made from DNA. Digestive enzymes taken orally can have wonderful value, not just for the digestive system, but also for the blood and also for inflammation. Taking digestive enzymes on an empty stomach is a must for people who are in surgery or pre-surgery and post-surgery. You'll get better prognosis from your surgery. Or if you break a leg or you get some kind of wound, you trip on the ice and you fall and you get a big gash on your face and you're all swollen, enzymes taken on an empty stomach are tremendously anti-inflammatory. They're also anti-pain. So they have pain relieving properties. And if you take them on an empty stomach or you take them with food, they'll help you digest your food. Enzymes can be used therapeutically. In fact, in Europe, they are used therapeutically, and in Japan. Only in the United States. I don't think in Australia they're not used either. I think the United States, Canada, and Australia, they're not really used therapeutically, but they can be used therapeutically for various disease states. Probiotics are another accessory nutrient. They're important for supplementing. We've all talked about probiotics ad nauseum. They're very important for digestive health, for the immune system, for the skin. And then also, I like a accessory nutrient called N-acetylcysteine, or NAC. NAC is very important for liver detoxification. Anybody who's interested in detox should be using NAC. If you're taking prescription drugs, you want to use NAC. We have a couple products with NAC in it. Longevity has a couple products with NAC in it. And another very exotic accessory nutrient, which is important for the blood sugar system, also has very interesting anti-inflammatory properties, can be used for pain relief, is called alpha lipoic acid. This one is tremendously, for a supplement, it's very expensive. And so you don't see a lot of people, you don't see a lot of formulations unless the formula is especially an alpha lipoic acid formulation. I think it's in the Synaptive, if I'm not mistaken, alpha lipoic acid, a small amount of alpha lipoic acid. And there are other interesting accessory nutrients. You'll see them advertised periodically, like the cannabinoids, or something called PEA is an accessory nutrient. Most of the nutrients that you see in special advertisements or emails or marketing or promotional campaigns are not the essential nutrients. They're the exotic accessory nutrients, because the essential nutrients are relatively inexpensive. The exotic ones are the ones that they'll sell you as a specialty formulation. And that's the 8 chapters of good nutrition. And that was by no means comprehensive, but that gives you a sense of, number one, how complicated this can get, but number two, how it can be simplified so that we can leverage it by ingesting protein from whey and from egg and from various amino acids, and making sure that you're getting your essential fatty acids and saturated fat, reducing your intake of unsaturated fats and never cooking your fats. You don't need a lot of carbohydrates, but you need some. The best carbohydrates are going to be the glucans and the fucoidins, the ones that have immune boosting properties. We get energy from carbohydrates, so you need some of them, but you don't need a lot of them. If you're doing a lot of carbohydrates, it's really important to do the nutrients that help your body process the carbohydrates, which is the micronutrients. Fiber, we can all use more fiber, at least 30 grams a day, which is 2 tablespoons a day. Most people are lucky to get one tablespoon. There was a doctor who did research on fiber. He went to Africa, and he noticed that the more fiber people ate, the better their digestive system was. And he came up with a slogan. He said, "The bigger the stools, the smaller the hospitals." So fiber is really important for helping the body process eliminate foods. It's also very important for women because it helps detoxify excess estrogen. And estrogen itself is a big problem, toxic estrogen or bad estrogen, if you will. Water, half a gallon to a gallon a day. We can all use more water. I like distilled and reverse osmosis are my favorite forms of water. Spring water is also good if the springs are clean, but the more water you're drinking, the more Beyond Tangy Tangerine you need to be using because you're going to be urinating out those water-soluble nutrients. I forgot to talk about minerals. I'll talk about minerals here in a second. The vitamins are fat-soluble and water-soluble. B and C are water ones. You want them throughout the day. B's give you energy. C's are important for the immune system. They're important for the connective tissue system. And then C's also, vitamin C is also I forgot to mention this, plays a protective role. It's a protective vitamin, especially against the sun, has sun protection benefits, along with the fat-soluble vitamin E, which is your fat-soluble protective vitamin, and then D and A are your hormone vitamins. They build things. They're important for the immune system. K is important for blood clotting and also for keeping calcium in the bones. Forgot to mention the minerals. How could I ever do that? But of course, minerals are they're going to require a large talk. So I'm going to tell you a little about the minerals, but let's talk about minerals on our next talk with Bronie.
Sounds great.
They're so fascinating. There's different minerals come in different forms. When we think of minerals, we don't really think of them appropriately because a mineral is a rock. In fact, rocks are made up of minerals. Minerals are you guys know what this is?
Yeah, it looks like a periodic table, isn't it?
A periodic table, right? Each little box here is an atom. And there's 90 plus of these atoms. A mineral is a bunch of atoms squished together. And they are of no use to the body. Body can't do anything with minerals. It needs these. It needs the elements. It needs the atoms. Now, there are ways that the body can pull out the atoms out of minerals, but it's very, very difficult to do. And for it's not an effective way for the body to get the elements. When you hear the body needs minerals, it doesn't really need minerals. It needs elements. And this is a really important distinction. And in this distinction, you have the reason for the tremendous confusion that people have around this section or this chapter of the Handbook of Good Nutrition. In fact, even nutritionists and dietitians and people who study these things don't really understand that it's the elements that we need, not minerals. And the fact that we call it minerals accounts for a lot of confusion. So minerals are the things that are in your garden. However, there are creatures on planet Earth that can actually separate out the atoms from the minerals. How cool is that? They can eat the minerals. They can eat the minerals and secrete out the elements. Oh my God, that's a miracle. What are these creatures that do this? They're bacteria and fungi, microbes. And these microbes can chew up the rock and secrete out the elements. You guys get this distinction between minerals and elements. The body uses nickel and it uses carbon and it uses iodine and it uses chromium and it uses selenium and it uses tin and it uses all the different elements, maybe not tin so much, magnesium and manganese and all these different elements. It doesn't use the squished up version, it uses the elements. These bacteria and fungi do that for us. And then they don't really do it for us because we don't eat the bacteria, we don't eat the bacterial secretions. Plants eat the bacterial secretions. The plants eat these bacterial secretions and then they grow. And they use these bacterial secretions to create these complexes. These complexes are called colloids. And the term for these elements that have been transformed by bacteria and then eaten by the plants or sucked up into the root system of the plants and then complexes are formed from these elements are called colloidal minerals. And this is where the term colloidal minerals comes from. A colloidal mineral is an element really that has been complexed by a plant after it got sucked up from the bacterial secretions that were in the soils. So the plants contain these secretions and colloids. They contain minerals that are secreted and they contain colloids. Now, I should tell you one very interesting thing about these secreted minerals. If you take a mineral, or these secreted elements, if you take a mineral and you put it in water, what's going to happen to that mineral? It's going to sink to the bottom. But once that mineral has been transformed magically, hear how many times I'm saying magic, because that's really what's going on here is magic. Once these minerals have been transformed by these bacteria into elements, they now will dissolve in water. They turn them from insoluble into soluble. Water makes things active. It vivifies. It animates. It contributes life energy to stuff, to things. So now these rocks go from being inert to being electrical. In fact, we don't call them rocks. We don't call them elements. We call them, when they're in liquid, we call them electrolytes. An electrolyte is an atom that can now be dispersed in water. Electrolytes are water soluble, and these bacteria, these lithotropes, or these fungi, they call them lithotropes, by the way. A lithotrope means stone eaters. Lith means stone, trope is eating. And these creatures that eat the minerals and turn them into these electrolytes are called lithotropes. And they vivify, they animate, they contribute the life force via electricity to these ordinary minerals that are just sitting there doing nothing. So you got these minerals doing nothing. Bacteria, lithotropes, eat the minerals. Lithotropes, they eat the minerals, they secrete out, they poop out long strings of atoms called electrolytes, technically polyelectrolytes. Poly means many. They string out these polyelectrolytes. These polyelectrolytes are now water soluble. They can interact with various things. When they interact with the dirt, they form these wonderful clays. And these clays now have minerals, and they have electrolytes, and they have organic material from dead plants. And it's the most powerful stuff on earth. What we call dirt is the most powerful stuff on earth. It's why the earth isn't the moon, is because of the dirt. The dirt is what gives everything life, and it's all seeded by these polyelectrolytes. The polyelectrolytes then go into the plants. The plants suck up the electrolytes. They turn some of these electrolytes into colloids. We call those colloidal minerals. Then the plants die, and they drop off their colloidal minerals, these minerals that have been complexed with various proteins and molecules, and these polyelectrolytes. Some people will call them ionic because they have electrical charges. An ion has electrical charges, and they go into the soil. There are parts of the world where there were lots of foliage 100 million years ago, 200 million years ago, 300 million years ago. Today, they look like deserts, but 300 million years ago, they were forests with tremendous amounts of plants. 300 million years ago, the earth had all kinds of plants, much more foliage than it does today. That's when the ages of the dinosaurs. And when those plants died, they deposited their colloidal minerals and their ionic minerals into the soils, along with organic matter. And then the new plants came, and then those plants died, deposited their minerals, new plants came, and you had this whole cycle over the course of hundreds of millions of years ago, hundreds of millions of years. And today, where these forests and foliage and all these plants used to live, we have large areas we call mines. And these mines contain vast amounts of fossilized plants that are rich in minerals that have been left behind and pressurized. In fact, when they get really pressurized, they can actually turn into oil, or turn into the stuff we get oil from. That's where we get oil from. But even before they get that pressurized, they're not quite as squished. We can scoop some of these things out. We can put them in water, and we can drink it and get all that nutritional value, all that electrolyte value, all that colloidal mineral value. And in fact, we do that at Youngevity. Youngevity actually owns a mine that they can scoop this stuff out, and that's where the plant-derived minerals come from. So there's tons more to talk about the minerals, and I call them minerals just because that's what we call them, but really we're talking about elements, and we're talking about atoms. And the fact that we call them minerals, and I'm doing it myself because it's just in the vernacular, it really accounts for a lot of misunderstanding, because really the value of these things that are called minerals are because they're elements. They're magnesium and their copper and their iron and their carbon and their hydrogen, their silicon, and all the stuff on the periodic table. They're not minerals. A mineral is something that's squished together. Although these days it's become almost like I say, it's in the part of the language to call minerals, to call electrolytes and atoms minerals. But really what we're looking for, the body's looking for, are the atoms and the elements. there's no real minerals in the body except for in the teeth and in the bones, and in the skeletal system, we have minerals. But in the chemistry, you don't have minerals. You've got atoms, you've got ions, electrically charged minerals, and electrolytes that are floating in the fluid system of the body. You guys, that was an hour and a half, that was almost 2 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I haven't even scratched the surface. I left out so much. I'm trying to simplify. But you can see how, but listen, isn't this fun?
Yes.
Isn't this interesting? It's so relevant. And nobody's talking about it. You know, Longevity is the only company that's really talking about this stuff and hitting it really hard. And for you guys who are in Longevity, you should be really proud of this company, because we're really helping people understand how to utilize all these things. And for people who aren't in Longevity, we need you. If you find this stuff interesting, talk to Bronie, talk to Michelle, talk to Kevin, and just dive in, man, because we need you. We need
Karen
you.
and Diane and Grant.
Help us out. Okay. All right.
All right.
So
well, because we've gone over time, I think we might, I know there's probably lots of questions, but we might ask people to hold their questions, make a note of it.
We do. I got another video to do here in 6 minutes.
That's right. And we'll catch that next time. So thank you, Ben, for that. That was absolutely amazing.
Can I just say something first? Can I just say
Ben,
something?
can you write a book, please?
Yeah,
Well,
we need you to write that book.
I don't know if you can see that, but Ben, if you want to go more in depth what Ben's just talked about, this CD, The 7 Strategies of a Healthy Living.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I did do that. I forgot about that.
Yes, and he talks about.
Look at that young guy.
And that's exactly what he talks about: carbs, fats, protein, vitamins, minerals, all on a 2 CD tape. All right.
Is that Michelle? Who's talking? Is that Michelle?
No, that's Karen.
Oh, that's Karen. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Karen.
Kevin's sister.
I know
Yeah.
Karen.
Yeah. So that's it. You did this years ago, didn't you?
There.
I did that. Yeah, I think about 1998. I did with Rich Stocks. When we were
Yes.
both kids.
Yes. All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, thank you
so
very
much.
much for today, Ben. We can do
Thank you.
part 2 next time.
Yeah, thank
2
you,
weeks.
Ben.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
So as I
Bye.
asked you all nicely here in Bronie's World to stay safe, stay informed, be empowered, but do not live in fear, my friends. And when Ben gets around to writing this book on the 8 basic nutritions, then we will all buy it. And then we will too. Powerful, beautiful, brilliant, and most definitely very brave. God bless you all. Catch you again tomorrow here in Bronie's.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.